American borrower was fantastic. He or she was driven in a way they had never foreseen. They didn't understand this the way you now do. And what the American banks discovered is a level of desperation that makes the American worker the best patsy any lender could ever want. Somebody who borrows out of abject desperation. It's psychological, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. So banks began to discover that there's a second way to lend to Americans. Those who have no house, or to whom you've already lent all that you could lend on the house. So American banks invented in the 1970s something new. It's that piece of plastic in your wallet. It's called a credit card, which didn't exist before that. That was invented by the American Express Company and led the way, but became I'm not talking about its existence, I'm talking about its existence as a mass phenomenon. Credit card debt. What is credit card debt for those of you that are not familiar? It's called in economics unsecured debt. That means it has no collateral. When you take out a mortgage, if you ever looked at a mortgage is a document in which the bank gives you a loan and you pledge that if you do not pay back that loan at the interest rate every month the way is listed in your document, the bank can take your house. It takes your house, it sells your house to get the money to repay itself what you owe them, and if there's anything left, it gives it to you. That's what a mortgage is. So it's a loan secured by your house as backing. A credit card has no backing at all. It's just your promise to pay. And so the bank said, whoa, we're taking a risk. But we all know what a bank does when it takes a risk. It covers itself by charging a much higher rate of interest. So loans on mortgages in America for most of these 30 years were in the nature of 4 to 6 to 7% per year. Credit card debt, 3 times, 4 times that. Credit card debt in the United States now 18, 19%, something in that area. Mortgage rate debt's now even lower, 4% or something like that. So you get the relationship? But Americans did it. I won't embarrass you in the room by asking how many of you do it. You borrow and you pay. And a genius psychologist came up with the idea, write the monthly bill in the credit card in the following way. You owe $4,622.18. What we need you to pay this month is $11. Oh, you all say, I can do that. And gleefully you write an $11 check. That's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to pay the least possible and keep building up borrowing that you're paying 18% per year to carry. The American working class was so determined to keep accumulating consumption because it was what life was about, what life was for, what success they had struggled for meant. That they borrowed and they borrowed and they borrowed. Yeah.
Just one other thing is that it somehow developed that the higher credit line you had, the better person you were somehow.
Absolutely. Those of you who ever had the credit, many of you must have gone through this, right? Periodically, I've had that. The credit card company, I worked with Citibank. I have to remember. There is no more Citi. I don't know if you read today's newspaper. The government is basically about to take over Citibank, and it's already a government bank. It's not going to be officially a government bank. In any case, I have a Citibank credit card, and periodically they write me a letter which goes something like this. Dear sir, we are so deeply in love with you that we are raising your limit. Your limit used to be $6,400. Now it's going to be $8,900. And then there's 3 paragraphs of what you say, telling me what a wonderful person I am And what this is a vote of it's a cultural artifact. You ought to keep these letters and frame them, because these are ways of the society say, see, you've arrived. You're a good person. Here, you idiot, borrow more. Borrow more. Well, if flattery gets you to borrow at 18%, I'll flatter you from here to tomorrow. Of course, why not? Okay, so what do we have? We have 25 years of borrowing. So now what happens? As the banks discover the amount of money to be made lending to the desperate American consumerist working class, they go nuts. What I'm about to tell you, if you grasp this, you'll understand the genius of American capitalism and also its Achilles heel. As corporations made fantastic profits, all corporations. Why? Well, ask yourself, if you're a company whose workers keep producing more and more each year, but you don't have to pay them anymore each year, don't need an advanced degree. I get more from each worker, but I don't give him any more. All the extra from the productivity is me. I'm the employer. I keep it. I get more and more from the worker. I don't have to give him anything. It's all for me. This period, profits, which is the distance between these two lines, gets bigger and bigger. This is called the last 25-year boom. That's why we had a stock market explosion in the 1990s. That's why we had a profit boom. That's why the rich got richer and the rest of us sitting here. Right? But here's the punchline. These rich people took these enormous profits and put them in the bank. And what did the banks do with them? They had to find a profitable way to use them. I just told you what they found. The banks took the profits deposited in them and lent it to the workers. Are you with me now? If you lump together the business, the profit capitalists and the banks, they're interwoven anyway, what American capitalism achieved in the last 30 years was to stop paying workers higher wages and instead to lend them the money. Hey, imagine yourself a business executive. And let me repeat what I just said. For 30 years, instead of paying the workers more wages, as you've been doing for 150 years, you gave them loans, which they had to pay back with interest. This is too good. This is too good. This is gooder than anything we could have imagined. The business school never told us it would be this good. And in the craze, as often happens in periods of profit, capitalists go nuts. So they began at the end of this period, starting around 2000, to say, okay, we've lent to all the people who have mortgaged their houses, and we've lent to all the people who can take out credit cards. We now have to, who can lend to? I know there's about 25% of the people that are so piss poor that they have no house and we'll never give them a credit card. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to approach them and say, we want to lend to you too. Who are these people? They have a peculiar name. They're called the subprime borrower. A nice way of saying the 25% piss poorest people in the country. And we're going to lend to them. And guess what? When you have, after 25 years of a lending spree, the likes of which the world has never seen, which is now stretched to lending to people who you never lent to before for a damn good reason, because they can't pay it back, you're going to get to the point where you've overdone it. You've lent to people who can't in a million years pay it back. And that's what happened last year. The mass of people who had been given these loans in the go-go days when everything was working got to the point where they couldn't anymore. 14% of the disposable income of an American, that's the amount of money you get after you pay taxes and basic things, is now used for what's called debt service. $1 out of $7 at the American work after the taxes. You're spending money. You can't spend on anything because you got to pay it off. You pay off your debts. Okay. So what's happening is they can't anymore. But they can't make it. They're paying off their debts. There's not enough for the food, the shelter, and for that mortgage of the house they can't afford. All the details of this you're going to get. But in a way, this crisis that explodes in the last 2 years was built up over this whole period of time by the rising wage story, by its relationship to the productivity story, by whatever happened in the 1970s, which we're all going to explain, you're going to understand that perfectly, creates a profit boom on the one hand, this widening, a crisis for the working class resolved by excess work and debt. So by 2007, profit is going mad with speculation. That's why we had the stock market crash of 2000 and the wildness of that you may remember. And we have the desperation of a working class that is physically exhausted and anxiety ridden up the wazoo because they know it can't carry the debt. You lose work for 3 months, you're finished, everything is lost. And I haven't even begun to tell you all the crisis of the American family when mother leaves. Mother is what holds the American family together under all this stress. And when you take mother out of the house and send her off to work, she can't do that anymore. American women, particularly women who are married and with children, are the largest consumers of legal and illegal drugs in the world. No other population, male or female, comes close. What is that about? Do we have a souped up female population in America? Is something wrong with you all? You've put these people under a level of stress that explains why any population under that stress would be taking every Prozac, every antidepressant, the people of this country are exhausted on every level that we can measure. And that's one of the reasons why this is not one of your run-of-the-mill business cycles. This is the big one. Biggest in our lifetime.